Bel-Air, Ohio, isn't the kind of place you'd associate with crime scenes or police tape. Nestled along the Ohio River, it's a town where the hum of coal mines echoes in the background and where family values, hard work, and small-town charm are woven into daily life. Here, people leave their doors unlocked, children ride their bikes freely, and weekend barbecues are a community affair. It's the kind of place where gossip travels fast but serious crime feels like a distant problem reserved for big cities. But in May of 2017, the unthinkable happened. The tranquility of this close-knit town was shattered when the lifeless body of 43-year-old Brad McGarry was discovered in the basement of his modest home. Brad hadn't died of natural causes. He had been shot execution-style, once in the back of the head. At first it seemed like a robbery gone horribly wrong. Drawers were pulled open, furniture was knocked over, and personal belongings were scattered across the floor. But as investigators looked closer, something didn't feel right. The scene looked staged, too perfect in its chaos. And what initially appeared to be a random break-in soon revealed layers of betrayal, hidden motives, and secrets that had been buried for years. This wasn't a crime driven by greed or revenge. It wasn't the result of an angry confrontation between enemies or a jealous lover in the conventional sense. No, this murder was far more calculated, far more personal, and far more chilling. It stemmed from a secret so dangerous that one man believed the only way to protect himself was to kill the person who knew it. And the man who pulled the trigger wasn't some masked intruder. He was Brad's best friend, David Kinney. David wasn't just any friend. He was a man Brad had trusted with his life and his heart. To the outside world, David was a devoted husband, a loving father of two, and a hard-working coal miner, a man who fit perfectly into Bel-Air's idyllic mold. But beneath that facade, David was living a double life, and that double life would become the catalyst for murder. Welcome to True Crime Alibi, your go-to source for gripping real-life crime stories that uncover the secrets hidden behind closed doors. We're here to walk you through the cases that leave more questions than answers, the ones that remind us how easily trust can turn deadly. If you're fascinated by true crime and want in-depth stories delivered with care and precision, you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a case that could leave you questioning what you thought you knew. And if you're ready to dive deeper into today's shocking story, let's continue. Brad McGarry was the kind of person everyone wanted at their party. His laugh was contagious, his humor sharp, and his ability to make people feel comfortable was unmatched. Born and raised in Bel-Air, Ohio, Brad grew up in a town built around coal mining, where hard work was a way of life and tradition ran deep. For most of his life, Brad embraced the close-knit nature of his hometown, but it wasn't always easy. Being openly gay in a conservative town like Bel-Air meant that Brad often felt like an outsider. In his early years he struggled with self-acceptance, facing rejection from some friends and even family members. But Brad was resilient. He didn't let the judgment define him. By his late 30s he had found his footing, building a life that reflected who he truly was. He had a job in the local coal industry, a small but cozy home, and a group of friends who became his chosen family. Brad was known for hosting gatherings where laughter filled the room, and his cooking was something friends raved about. But there was one thing Brad still longed for: true love and stability. For years, Brad had experienced fleeting relationships, but none that offered the depth and security he craved. That changed when he met David Kinney, a man who seemed to understand him on a level that others hadn't. To Brad, David wasn't just a friend, he was someone who made him feel seen and valued. But what Brad didn't know was that David's love came with conditions and dangerous secrets. Have you ever had a friend you thought you could trust completely, only to find out they weren't who you thought they were? Let us know in the comments. David Kinney's life appeared picture-perfect from the outside. He had a wife, 2 children, and a job that allowed him to provide for his family. He was the kind of man you'd see at neighborhood barbecues or little league games, always smiling, always blending in. But beneath that facade was a man living a double life, torn between 2 worlds. David had grown up in a working-class family in Bel-Air, where traditional values were instilled from a young age. He married his high school sweetheart and built the kind of life his parents had always envisioned for him: a house, kids, and a steady job. But there was a part of David that he kept hidden, even from himself. His relationship with Brad wasn't his first secret. Throughout his adult life, David had struggled with his identity. In a town like Bel-Air, where being different often meant being ostracized, David had learned to suppress his feelings. But when he met Brad, something shifted. What started as a friendship quickly turned into something more, something that David couldn't control. For Brad, the relationship was a lifeline. But for David, it was a threat to everything he had built. He loved Brad, but he loved his family too. The fear of being exposed consumed him, and as their relationship deepened, so did his paranoia. He worried constantly about what would happen if Brad told someone about them. That fear would eventually push him to make a decision that would change both their lives forever. Have you ever seen someone trapped between two lives, unable to make a choice? Share your thoughts in the comments. On the evening of May 6, 2017, Brad invited David over to his house. It wasn't unusual for the two to spend time together, but this night was different. Brad had been growing frustrated with their secret arrangement, and according to text messages later found on his phone, he was ready to confront David. He had given David an ultimatum: either come clean to his wife or end the relationship. But Brad didn't know how dangerous cornering David could be. What happened next remains unclear, but investigators believe that an argument broke out between the two. Brad may have threatened to tell David's wife the truth. In a fit of panic, David grabbed a gun from Brad's basement and shot him in the back of the head. The shot was quick, clean, and calculated, suggesting that Brad had no time to react. But David's actions didn't end with the murder. He began staging the scene to look like a robbery. He overturned furniture, pulled out drawers, and scattered items across the room. However, he made several mistakes. The drawers were only partially pulled open and nothing valuable had been taken. The scene looked staged because it was. David then fled the house, leaving Brad's lifeless body in the basement. But his attempt to cover his tracks would quickly fall apart. When Brad's friends couldn't reach him the next day, they went to his house to check on him. What they found was a nightmare. His body was discovered in the basement, and police were called immediately. At first, investigators considered the possibility of a home invasion. But as they examined the crime scene, they noticed inconsistencies. Nothing of value was missing, and the areas that had been ransacked appeared staged. It didn't take long for suspicion to fall on David Kinney. David had initially told police that he had left Brad's house around 5 p.m. the previous evening. But neighbors reported seeing his truck outside Brad's home much later that night. Surveillance footage confirmed this, showing David's truck leaving the house well into the night. Forensic evidence further implicated him. His fingerprints were found on several items in the basement, including the gun safe. Text messages between him and Brad painted a picture of a relationship under strain, with Brad demanding more than David was willing to give. The most damning piece of evidence, however, was Brad's journal. In it, he had written, "If anything happens to me, David did it." Those words would echo throughout the courtroom during David's trial. Under pressure during a lengthy interrogation, David finally confessed. He admitted to shooting Brad but claimed it wasn't premeditated. He said he had acted in a moment of panic, driven by fear that his secret would be exposed. But prosecutors painted a different picture. They argued that the crime was calculated, and that David had planned to kill Brad to protect his double life. During the trial, witnesses testified about Brad's fears leading up to his death. Friends revealed that he had expressed concern about David's temper and had even considered ending the relationship for good. The prosecution used this to establish motive, showing that David's fear of exposure was the driving force behind the murder. The jury deliberated for several days before finding David Kinney guilty of aggravated murder. He was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 15 years. Brad McGarry's death sent shockwaves through Bel Air. His friends and family mourned the loss of a man who had fought for acceptance and who had finally begun to find happiness. His death was a tragic reminder of how dangerous secrets can be. As for David Kinney, he now sits in prison reflecting on the choices that led him there. His story serves as a warning about the devastating consequences of living a double life and the destruction that can follow when fear outweighs love. Do you think the jury made the right decision in this case? Let us know in the comments. Brad McGarry's trust in David Kinney cost him everything. What began as a bond built on love and shared secrets ended in betrayal, deception, and a tragic death. It's a stark reminder that the people closest to us can sometimes cause the deepest harm. If you found this case compelling, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. In our next story, we'll uncover the chilling case of a woman whose picture-perfect marriage concealed a deadly plot. You won't want to miss it.